Pierre is a chief climate at Tikehau with 46 billion under management. He's also a friend, a systemic thinker, and a relentless climate protection advocate. So how do you do to have an impact in your job, whether at the Tikehau level or at the two funds you're managing in energy and agro?
Yeah, right. So on Tikehau side, we've got like a sustainable and impact platform. It's roughly 12 billion euro out of the 40. So it's something that we've launched back in 2018 when I joined the company. There is half of it that is fairly easy because it's real estate. So basically, if you own real estate, well, you renovate real estate, and therefore you're going to align yourself. So I would say that the easy part. And then there is the most complex part, which is investing into the real economy to try to decarbonize the real economy, which is a bit more complex. So indeed, I'm directly overseeing our flagship fund, that is our decarbonization fund, and also have launched a fund dedicated to regenerative agriculture. And those funds are private equity fund and more like on the control positioning one. So basically, we set up a situation where we don't ask ourselves the question that we had at the first panel, which was, okay, if we're on the liquid market, how are you going to handle, your portfolio, etc. Ultimately, well,
you get to make the call.
Well, yeah, we own between 50 to 99% of the company. So ultimately, there is a shareholding alignment with the management as a starting point. Then I will just quiz a bit yourself just to wake up everyone. So have you got an idea of the size of the fossil fuel market last year? What is the investment that is on the fossil fuel market right now? Any idea? Anyone?
Because the capex levels?
Yeah, the investment made.
200 billion?
1 trillion.
Voilà, the ex-guy from Total. So, okay.
I know a few here.
I'm also from Total, so
I
that's
know a
why.
few here.
Subsidized or unsubsidized?
No. The subsidies. Do you have an idea of the subsidies of the fossil fuel industry, by the way? No, it's more than that. It's 1.7 trillion per year. So I will just break a misconception right now. The renewable and the decarbonization is not subsidized. What is subsidized is the fossil fuel industry, which is normal because it's 80% of the global energy used, and therefore, in terms of having access to this energy, you have to subsidize largely. So last year there was roughly 400 billion of subsidy for the renewable space, 1.7 trillion on the fossil fuel space, which is twice as much as the investment in the fossil fuel industry. Now, just I will quiz you again. Have you got an idea of...
You thought he would be doing the work, right?
No, have you got an idea of the investment on the decarbonization space last year? I will make it simple. You are not part of it. Yeah, you are not part of it.
Don't cheat.
So is it like a fraction of the fossil fuel investment? Is it like the fossil fuel investment, or is it a multiple of the fossil fuel investment?
Less. Much less.
No, so it's twice more, right? So last year there was 1.8 trillion invested into the decarbonization. Now, I will come back into it. I will come back into it.
Question heard.
Yes, I take the question. So now, have you got an idea of the investment made on the VC tech part of the decarbonization last year?
Small.
100 billion.
So it's 32 billion. So the investment in the climate tech is 2% of the global investment into the decarbonization.
I read a funny fact. It's smaller than the dog food market.
Yeah. So the reality is that we are currently into a market that is twice as big as the fossil fuel industry, but somewhat no one is able to capture it. Have you got an idea why? Because it's mostly a mid-cap regional local market. So basically, you are not going to be able to name a listed company or a large cap that is doing a pure decarbonization play. Otherwise, you will have to name Total Energy, which is the biggest renewable player. But then you are going to have a problem because you will say, oh, well, that's a fossil fuel player, but that's also a renewable player. So you will find all the guys from the energy that are basically energy providers. So they are providing fossil fuel energy and renewable. But then you won't be able to find them. And then you will have plenty of, ideas, and EcoVadis being one of them, some flagship that shows, how the climate tech moved. But ultimately, this is just a small portion of the market. So to answer to your question, I mean, the International Energy Agency is very clear about what is decarbonizing the economy, as well as the IPCC. And this is basically electrifying the end user, so mostly replacing any internal combustion engine by electric engine. This is electrifying the people that are using heat, so it's mostly building an industry, so replacing any boilers by heat pump. Therefore, that means in upgrading the grid massively. But when I say massively, I will give you some data point. And then when you have upgraded the grid, you can fulfill this grid with low carbon source of energy. And the last COP28 pledge are basically tripling the renewable by 2030, doubling the energy efficiency of the system, and tripling the nuclear power by 2050. So that's, in a nutshell, that's the main master plan of the IPCC and the EIA, with a milestone in 2030 and 2050. But the main issue that you've got here, for me, is not a question of money, it's not a question of ambition. It's a question of workforce and a question of access to critical minerals. To make this plan, you need to install power cables. If you want to electrify the end user, first you need to change everything with a heat pump or an electric engine. And this is doable. It's not a big issue to do such a thing. But then once you've done that, that means that by 2030, more or less into the advanced economy that we are part of, because the topic is mostly a question of advanced economy, you need to double the electricity production and consumption. In fact, the electricity consumption will double, therefore you need to double the electricity production, but you need to transmit it. You need basically by 2030 to install an additional 30 million kilometers of power cables if you want to fulfill this plan. Right? So 30 million kilometers of power cable is the distance between Earth and Mars. Right? That means that every 5 days we need to lay the round of the Earth of power cables. To give you a sense of what we do right now, we do it every 15 days. So in fact, we are doing it, quite a lot. But the pace needs to triple. But you then understand that if we manage to make the round of the Earth every 15 days, that means that there are millions of people that are doing that. So if I want to triple the pace, I need to find tomorrow morning millions multiplied by 3 number of people doing this, and those are mostly into the advanced economy, which is us and the US. While we have been training the people to make generative IA that will end up into a blockchain, trying to make some crypto to build the NFT that will tokenize carbon credit. So then we're safe. So you will need a decade to have enough people to lay down, those power cables. And then even if I manage to do this like this, okay, magic, boom, I do it. Then I need to look at the copper. The copper right now, half of it is used for power cables. So which means that another half is used for something else. If I want to triple the pace, tomorrow morning, I need to basically have 1.5 plus the 0.5. So I need to double the copper production tomorrow morning, which means that I need to double something that took 200 years to be developed to be able to fulfill this need. So my personal take is that we are going to be late. We are going to be late 20 to 30 years, but nothing to do with lack of ambition or politician or, lack of equity or more money to be poured into the system. Simply because it's physically impossible to build up the workforce and have access to the critical minerals that are basically required in the required time frame, because we are talking about 2,000 days. This is what we are talking about. So basically, we need to do something that is more or less as big as the Industrial Revolution, but in 2,000 days.
6 years.
Well, it took like 200 years to reach the point where we are today. So that's the main issue that we have, which means that on our side, when we have invested, we have decided to invest into things that are like super boring. What we need to do in the next 6 years, especially into the advanced economy here, is electrify the end use. So indeed, we invest into companies that are making electric engine. Indeed, we are looking at the value chain of the heat pump. We are looking at a company right now that is connecting, new assets to the grid. We have been investing into companies that are providing those low carbon source of energy that can be solar, that can be biomass. But we have been also investing quite largely into companies that are just renovating buildings, or guys that are in factories building building like high efficient windows, doors, insulation, or like electric engine. So if you look at our first portfolio, the first fund was 1.5 billion, so making like fairly big investment. We can invest up to 300 million from this first fund, taking control position into our company. We've got 14 companies. If you look at this portfolio, it's roughly 30,000 people working. And out of these 30,000 people, we've got 15,000 engineers, so guys that are looking at systems, designing them, trying to retrofit the existing, putting some public transportation, electrifying the end use and so on, overseeing construction, because ultimately you need to do stuff at the end of the day, because if you want to decarbonize the real economy, the one that is currently emitting, you need to do stuff. And then you've got 10,000 people in factories building bits and bobs of those stuff. And then you've got 5,000 people doing business services. So, in fact, fulfilling the demand that you generate through your reporting. When you drive someone towards like sustainable procurement, a company like Carrefour taking the SBTI and then suddenly want to have a logistical service. Well, I've got a portfolio company that is providing logistical services. That is a mid-cap, but we have pushed the SBTI into this company. So suddenly, when you've got Carrefour that try to do this, well, they find someone that is doing the logistics.
So you're investing in a boring company where you know the trend is there for the next 10 years, the next 20 years. Yeah. But then a question to you for the investor in the room, is the performance boring?
Well, the performance is pretty standard, so it's 25% IRR and 2.6 times so far.
Decent. Pretty decent.
But what we do is mostly boring and with low leverage. So ultimately, we are entering at an average of 10 times EBITDA into companies, which is like the conventional mid-cap.
But then you grow the company and then you grow the EBITDA.
But usually, we triple the size of the company in 5 years because we are on those secular mega trends. If you look at those trends, I was talking about the decarbonization space. When we entered and we launched the first fund, this market was 1 trillion per year, right? Okay. Today it's 1.8. Tomorrow, even if we just implement the policy in place, so the thing that are already carved into the policy, it's 2.4. If we do the net zero scenario, it's 4.3. As I said, this one is physically impossible, but believing that we can increase the pace by 20 to 30% is doable. So therefore, reaching a point by 2030 of 3 trillion per year, that would be my take, I would say. So basically we are on the market by 2030 that will be between 5 to 10 times as big as the fossil fuel market. Again, a doubling from the current market right now. We are talking about something without the adaptation that is already 5% of the global GDP. So small.
So 3 lessons I hear from you. First, find the tailwind. Yeah. Second, find the company which is going to benefit immensely from this tailwind. Third, invest, and it's not just buyout, it's buyout and growth. So you put big checks, new money to grow them, and then give back 25%. What about agriculture? Do you want to just a quick word on agriculture? And then to the room, it will be time for your questions.
Yeah, so we have also launched a fund dedicated to regenerative agriculture. As you know, I live myself into a regenerative farm.
Yeah, he's actually with his wife. He's a farmer. He owns a farm. So he tested.
My wife is more a farmer than me. In fact, she's doing all the work.
Okay.
But I had to plant potatoes this weekend as well because it was the moon.
Okay.
So it was very important. Like it is the moon now. You have to plant potatoes. Okay, so I had to plant potatoes because it's the moon.
And your fund is 15 years, not just 10.
Yeah, it's 15 plus 1 plus 1, so it's 17 years. To be honest, I'm not myself that scared about climate and the effect of CO2. It's like a slow death. So it's not something that can be brutal. Much more like annoyed or afraid about what we do on the agriculture space. I heard someone, I'm not sure if he's here, still the guy from formerly from ADEM, he mentioned the planetary boundaries. The reality is that most of the ecological stress that we put on our planet is linked to the agriculture, simply because it's a question of size. I mean, ourselves, human being, we represent 0.01% of the mass of biomass, so of the living, and we have currently colonized 50% of the habitable land to produce stuff. Right, which means that basically when we decided to do this, to feed ourselves, we also took what was the most fertile, which was a forest. So if you want to understand the loss of biodiversity, it's not a question of, primary forest, etc. This is a topic, definitely. But the main loss of biodiversity is the fact that we basically destroy the most diverse habitat everywhere, which is a forest, which is basically the result of the natural development of the earth, to plant stuff. And we are mostly, I will give you a statistic, there are 9 cereals that we are planting everywhere that feed ourselves for 90%. So basically we have replaced what is the most diverse everywhere what it can grow by 9 cereals. And then we have decided to put pesticide and we have decided to put fertilizer to make sure that everything is neat. So we've got no insect anymore and we've got no bacteriological life underground, and this is basically what leads us to the loss of biodiversity. Then the land system change. Then you've got the problem of eutrophication because we put the fertilizer, and then we've got indeed the problem of the water, because since we've got mechanical work on the ground itself, we have totally destructured it. So what we have decided to do, and again, it's time to market, simply because we reached the point where most of our land into the advanced economy again are near to their physical death right now. So if you go nearby my farm, you will see that physically when it's raining, the earth goes to the sea. It's just, the river are brown. Okay, so we have reached the physical death of the soil, which means that now it's eroding at a pace that, if we keep doing as we do, in 50 years we come back to the mother rocks. But when you are the mother rocks, it's relatively easy.
Nothing less.
To restart, in fact, the biological life of the soil. But when we have reached the mother rock, then you have to wait 100 million years to come back to have a soil. So that's a big issue. So it's the time where basically all the value chain, Unilever, Nestlé, Mars, etc., they are downstreams and they have squeezed perhaps a bit too much the agricultors, and we have put in place all those systems that multiplied, in fact, the agricultural production over the last few years. And then they realized that suddenly we increased the inputs, the chemical inputs, and the yield are decreasing. So therefore, everyone is thinking about how can we now regenerate the soil, and this is what's happening, since a while. And now we are at the moment where we need to invest in the toolbox to be able to implement the regenerative practices.
That's where you step in.
Yes, and this is where we're stepping. So the idea was the same silly idea that we had 6 years ago when we launched the first decarbonization fund. Said, okay, let's partner with industrial, so we get some money, and then we work on the value chain to invest into the toolbox. So the first deal that we've made, to give you an example, is a company called BioBest. It's a Belgian company. It's the worldwide leader of bumblebee cells. Okay. Why? We have been screwing our system, so therefore we don't have any pollination service anymore. I mean, we used to have an ecosystemic service that called pollination, and can be a bee, can be a fly, can be whatever, So now we have killed everything, so we don't have pollination. So therefore, you need to produce bumblebees to be able to pollinate, the greenhouse, especially that you will have in Holland, etc.
What size when you invested, and what size today?
So in fact, we have backed up this company to make an acquisition of another company that is called Biotrop. So okay. In fact, BioBest was very good at doing the bumblebee, and they were very good at making also some kind of insect that like to kill the insect that like to eat the fruit that you like to eat. Okay. So therefore, instead of putting pesticide, you are just producing the insect.
You can feel the passion, right?
You can invest into those kind of things. So they were very strong in Europe and to these kind of things, and we have purchased and backed them up. So we've made an investment of 420 million euros to back them up to purchase Biotrop.
400?
Yes,
nice.
so for 120 to make an investment of 400 million to purchase Biotrop.
Okay.
That basically is very strong into the US, the Americas, and in the biostimulant. So biostimulant is a bit like the vitamins that you will get yourself. So now we've got an aggregate that is, reaching 90 million euro EBITDA, several thousand of people working into it, and you have to realize that our competition when we do such a thing is like the Syngenta-like. So
you're building a new.
So similarly to the world of energy that is currently the biggest player of the transition in terms of renewable, the former oil and gas. Now you've got the former guys that were doing chemistry that also change their type of product because they see that the market is also moving. But we are here front running all of this, backing up, those guys that we identify as being a platform and giving them their means to basically consolidate the global market.
Building platform to build new.
It's the same story. It's always the same boring stuff that I do.
Build up.
Yes.
Thank you.